keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
But call it a reality because there's no illusion. That's how the song ends anyway. Go check it out. I haven't given a shout out to my buddy Ponder and XL, the guy, the producer and rapper who made that intro song for us so many years ago. It's still relevant, still a great song, great beat, great lyrics. You could download it for free, I believe, on Bandcamp and SoundCloud probably. Anyway, some local musicians here in San Diego, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the power of localism and local community building, especially in the wake of what's going on down in Texas with this hurricane. Building strong communities and community ties and localized food chains and that kind of stuff. If it wasn't essential before, if it wasn't obvious before, if we haven't been talking about that enough on this show before the hurricane hit, well, now we can talk about it some more because, obviously you're seeing what's going on in Texas, especially in Houston. Devastation, just massive amounts of flooding, main story on the anti-media right now. Just some of that footage from some drone that they flew up there to look at it, and some of those before and after things. I mean, freeways. I've driven on some of these freeways. I've been out. I've been to Texas many times. I consider it my home away from home, maybe because the Houston freethinkers are such awesome hosts. But I've been there a lot of times, and I've driven on some of these roads, and now I'm seeing them now, and they're like rivers. It's pretty scary seeing what's going on there, and unfortunately, people are dying and efforts are being made to rescue people, and there's looting and there's crime and there's other stuff going on. All the more reason to be able to depend on yourself and defend yourself. If someone's looting your house and coming and taking the food that is going to keep you alive for the next few days, you need to know how to defend yourself violently if necessary. And of course, that's all part of this idea of decentralizing the things that we need, whether it's our food, our water, our electricity, our defense. I'm sure the cops aren't really showing up on boats and saying, "Oh, we heard someone was trying to rob your house." You can't even get a hold of the cops right now because they're inundated with calls of rescues and stuff. So, I don't know how much more I can say. We're going to have Derrick Broze on the line in a little bit to talk a little bit about what they're doing in Houston with the Houston Freethinkers. And, he was just here in San Diego with this Decentralize Your Life tour. And they talked about preparedness and stuff. And that's one thing they've been working on down at the Houston Freethinker House. So, this is a great chance for them to shine and show their community, what they've been doing. Maybe they've been making sense. Maybe the community may have thought of them as, they're just these weird guys that they're growing their own garden and they're trying to be sustainable. All of a sudden, there's a catastrophe hit, and these are the guys with food, and so all of a sudden they look like geniuses, though we know that they've been that way the whole time. Anyway, we're going to kind of skip on the politics stuff for now. We're going to go ahead and try to get Derrick Broze on the line. We're going to have DB Schwartz as well. Maybe Jake. Maybe it'll be his last show. Today is Monday, August 28th. We didn't do the last Wednesdays because, first of all, it was just more of the same old crap with Donald Trump and these useless politicians, and we had already railed against it enough on Monday. And plus, it's the summertime. I'm trying to enjoy the last of this, summer in 2017. Things are getting a little strange out here, out everywhere, I guess. So I'm just trying to enjoy it. So I'm going to keep doing the shows, but, I may miss one here or there because I'm just trying to enjoy life a little bit, especially when the political stuff just gets, too invasive, and you can only talk about the same topic for so long before you get sick and tired of it, or, before it just, I don't know how many times I need to go on the show and just talk about how stupid and how idiotic politicians are. I think you guys already know that, so I don't really need to say that stuff as much anymore. I think we all know how dumb these people are and ridiculous and violent these people are. Donald Trump, what is it? What was the latest? He's now authorizing the military to give weapons to the cops again. I mean, exactly what we need after pardoning Joe Arpaio, the asshole, dickhead, racist sheriff who was basically bragging about running concentration camps in Arizona. So yeah, that's what Donald Trump's doing. I don't need to talk about how stupid he is. I think you guys either know it already or you're not willing to accept it anyway. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Welcome to my longtime co-host, DB Schwartz. What up, man?
Hey, man. You're not getting the fucking 5 million D chest that's going on.
501 million, right?
Dude, it's just, you give the guy a pass so long and then until you realize that he's compromised in some way, shape, or form. I mean, good things are happening, bad things are happening. It's just another presidency, and it's just another smoke and mirrors and bread and circus. I mean, the fight, the Mayweather fight, and then this storm, and then Arpaio getting pardoned. It's all in the bucket to the fact they just shredded the Constitution and said they can do a warrantless search, and then in Oregon they just signed gun confiscation. They're going to try it out and test it as a litmus test. So if you can't put two and two together and understand what warrantless search plus gun confiscation plus economic downturn means, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too great, but let's see what Derrick has to say. Right now we've got Derrick Broze, Houston Free Thinkers, joining us on the show. Derrick, you're down in Houston weathering this massive storm, Hurricane Harvey, which is, I don't know, now probably some kind of just regular storm at this point. But we're all seeing all the footage. We're seeing all the posts. We're collecting donations. Some people on our team are trying to help coordinate some efforts going on down there. Derrick, welcome to the Anti-Media Radio. It's too long, man. We're glad to have you back. What's up, dude?
Hey, what's up, brother? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude. Always a pleasure to have you on. And I think this is the first time we're actually kind of talking since you were here in San Diego. Just quickly, we've mentioned your tour on the show several times, but for those that haven't heard about it, make sure you check out the Decentralize Your Life tour. You guys are going to be back on the road in a little bit, right?
Yeah, we're hitting the East Coast in October, basically just going for 2 weeks across the southern East Coast, Florida, and then up the coast. And basically every stop we go, we're volunteering in communities, doing different types of community voluntary action. And then we have an evening event where we do meditations, we do discussions on anarchism and agorism and community organizing, and just basically ways to get free and to create more community reliance, get people to stop relying on corporations and government, like organizations like FEMA, like in the case of this hurricane and such.
Yeah, and this is so interesting to me because, I went to the Decentralize Your Life tour here in San Diego, and I heard you guys give your presentation. And one of the things you talked about was preparedness, being ready, because no matter where you're at around the world, it's always nice to be prepared because it could be any kind of event. It could be a weather event, could be a natural disaster. Out here, it could be an earthquake or wildfire. You never know, or even a big power outage or something. You never know when or why, but it's always nice to be prepared. And that was at least a small portion of the message that you guys brought here in San Diego as part of the Decentralize Your Life tour. Derrick, what have you experienced, given that you guys have been working at the Free Thinker House, trying to build up these local communities, counter economics, preparedness? I mean, what have you experienced so far in Houston, and what lessons have you learned?
I'm here. I think I lost you for a second. But yeah, I think I heard the question you're asking, what lessons related to, I guess, decentralization and community organizing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been doing this for 7 years now, and we've had 3 different community spaces, like the one we have now, the Free Thinker House, and definitely been able to work with a lot of good organizers in various communities, people who specifically focused on how communities can take care of themselves, whether it's weather emergencies and things like we're dealing with now, or just how communities can show people that a world without centralized authority is possible. And one of the ways you do that is obviously taking action. So that's really where I've tried to focus a lot of my energy on, like real world, actual, applicable ideas on giving people power to take care of themselves. Whether that's economically, or we're talking about education, we're talking about health, we're talking about community defense or policing, all these different areas. So I think it's important to just start with a small group of people and get active, get focused on whatever your similar goals are, what you want to be prepared for, what you want to, what your purpose of coming together is, and what kind of things you want to learn and teach each other and things of that sort. That's, the main concept that I've been promoting in that direction is Freedom Cells. And for people who want to get more involved with that and try to find other people, we have a website, freedomcells.org, CELLS.org. That's a good way for people to plug in and do that. And that's one example of a way to organize that, actually with this hurricane, tropical storm situation going on and weather emergencies in general, I think it's a very important tool that we could all use. Just the idea of coming together in small groups of people for this purpose of mutual aid and mutual knowledge sharing and skill sharing and all these types of ideas and preparedness. It puts people in a lot better situation to be able to take care of themselves rather than relying on the FEMAs or the Red Cross or whatever. And that's been really cool to see here in Houston. With this tropical storm, there's a lot of different private individuals and anarchist activists and just independent people coming together to try to anybody they can, and it's been pretty cool so far.
So a couple examples I have here. First of all, with FEMA. FEMA totally botched the Katrina relief effort, and so far FEMA, it's a huge, cumbersome organization that's very slow to react. It's probably misallocated resources, bureaucratically inefficient, and there's all kinds of things wrong with FEMA. And on the other hand, also I've seen plenty of posts about price gouging and kind of people taking advantage of the fact that there's a run on resources and a run on commodities. They're jacking up the prices of things, which honestly, if I was a business owner and I was running out of everything, I may do the same thing. I'm not saying I would price gouge, but maybe I would. But it's a great lesson as to why it's good to be prepared ahead of time, so that you're not, something happens like, oh shit, and it's an all-out panic and everyone's running to the store and all the shit's gone. Derrick, have you, how prepared were you for this, and have those preparations, what have you found from being prepared?
Well, obviously being prepared is just smart. One of the things I've been talking about on the Decentralize Your Life tour, with talking about the concept of freedom cells or just community organizing, is this idea of, well, hey, we should get prepared. One of the ideas we use is let's make sure that everybody in our small group, our community, has 3 months worth of backup supply of food, or make sure that everybody has, a emergency / bug out bag type thing. And sometimes when you're talking to people about these ideas, they're like, oh wow, this person sounds like a crazy prepper. They have this kind of vision or this idea that people who prep in some ways, and I mean by like storing food or clothing or gasoline or any of the resources that might be necessary in some situation where you don't have power or you don't have running water or just the basic things that people consider necessities. When you talk about that, some people, they just really get this dark image in their mind, like you're preparing for the zombie apocalypse or something. And I think it's important for people to get over that and to dispel that myth. So we've been trying to talk about it in the sense that, hey, this idea is important for these kind of things, weather emergencies. So as I said, getting a backup supply of food can be really helpful. And, I always use the example of my grandmother who has a farm. She's in her early 80s in Kentucky, and she's grown up her whole life just like every weekend going canning vegetables from her garden and just taking them down in her cellar and storing them for later. And this is just like when we had farms, people were storing up for the winter because when it snowed, if it snowed where you couldn't grow anything. And so you have to make bales of hay to feed the cows during the winter since all the grass is going to be dead. And you have to have some food that your family can survive on through the winter. So it just was natural for our ancestors, not even going very far back, to be prepared and to think longer term. And that's just valuable, and it's valuable in a number of ways. So yeah, when you think about that, the idea of storing up food, it doesn't seem so crazy. And so yeah, storing up food is important. Having water, backup water. One thing that I like to think about that I've been noticing more and more is just that as I've become more mindful of waste and just environmentally aware, paying attention to the earth and trying to think about the future again, is I'm really just becoming more critical of waste in all situations. And I know that there's emergency situations. Everybody's out the stores buying all this bottled water, like plastic bottled water. And, it's cheap. It's not even really that cheap when you break it down. But they're just buying packs and packs of these bottles of water and taking them and storing them up. And, that's all just going to be plastic bottles that some of them might get recycled. There's still costs to that. Others might just become trash and just more plastic out in the world. And again, being more prepared, you can avoid this because one of the things that we use is these water filling stations. There's a couple different brands of them out there depending on where you're at in the country. But I've been all over the U.S. and I imagine in other places in the world there are as well. But you have these water filling stations that are, they're 20 to 30 cents a gallon. So over here we can get 5 gallons for $1.50, and we have 3 big reusable, like BPA-free 5-gallon containers for waters, and we'll just go fill up 3 or 4 of those and put those away, and that's like $5 or something compared to whatever you pay for all those bottles of water that are just waste. And yeah, there's convenience you could make about the plastic bottles. You can take one, and disperse it easily. But overall, it's just, I think being more prepared, again, you can also avoid being wasteful and more environmentally friendly if you care about that, which I think you should. But having backup, besides the food, you're having some bug out gear, just emergency first aid, basic things. Over here in Houston, really, people have been using boats. People who have boats, they're out here helping people out because for the most part, we really can't. If you're stuck with flooding, you really can't. You really can't get anywhere and do anything. So people who have boats have been able to get out there and help. But other than that, I think it's helpful when you're thinking about a freedom cell or a small group of people being coordinated and organized and prepared for this sort of thing, or planning for this thing, is to have some practice ahead of time of how you would deal with the situation, depending on what the situation would be. So as you mentioned earlier, people deal with weather emergencies all over. Like we talked to people who had when we were traveling across the country for the tour, people, like you said, wildfires or earthquakes or tornadoes. I think somebody said a mudslide or landslides or something. I forget where we're at, but yeah, so it's crazy. And we get hurricanes and tropical storms out here. So no matter where you're at, you have the possibility of facing some kind of environmental emergency, weather emergency, and it's probably a good idea to have some preparation of what to do with that. And if you've got a group of people that you can work with on this idea and on knowledge sharing, the skill sharing and preparedness, and you guys talk, okay, hey, if this happens, and then this is what we'll do. For example, there's been a lot of people organizing through social media, obviously, and there's some other good groups I want to mention in just a moment, who are doing a lot of planning, and it's happening through social media. I've also seen people using various apps, and these are awesome solutions that work when you have power and if you have a cell phone that's charged and available, because some people might, and that's another important thing, I guess, is having your devices charged so that the power goes out, you have as much battery as possible. But say the cell tower goes out or you don't have service or something like that, you can't access apps, you can't access the internet. If you've already have done some preparedness and you have with your group some ideas of where you want to be, okay, so what do we do if the power goes out and we're all in the city? Where do we meet? Do we have a place ahead of time? And then, just talking about different scenarios. Okay, well, what happens if there's flooding and we can't get to each other? Okay, this is what we'll do next. And these kind of things, again, they don't have to seem apocalyptic, zombie apocalypse type scenarios. It can just be being prepared for what to do in any kind of emergency, which is just smart planning and living, really, when it comes down to it. And can also be helpful in a lot of different situations. So that's really what I've focused on right now. And I'm going to be working on a video, actually, that talks more about that. But if we got a minute, man, before I get out of here, I do want to mention some of these groups that have been helping people, because I'm sure people have seen the pictures on the internet. It is pretty bad in some parts of Houston, for sure. Where I'm at in the East End, the streets and the sidewalks have been disappearing the past couple nights underwater, and then they'll sort of recede during the day. But there are other friends of ours and people in different parts of town really randomly placed who, they've had flooding above their houses, and people who've completely lost all their stuff. So that's definitely taking place, and lots of people having to move into shelters. But there are some groups and communities that are doing assistance, non-governmental organizations and activist communities that are doing assistance that I'd like to mention, if you don't mind.
Yeah, dude, go for it.
So one of them is a couple of them, Cajun Navy and the Texas Search and Rescue, which is a little bit, those are volunteer first responder type groups. They're out there with like boats and things helping people out. There's a couple of different people who've been organizing, like truck drivers coming down to deliver just truckloads of stuff. So that's been pretty interesting. I do want to mention Dan Johnson's We Do Better organization, which basically helps people find organizations that do a better job than the government at various things, and connects them with organizations that can get the resources they need. There's also, as far as Houston, there's a group on just a Facebook group called Houston Area Off-Road Recovery Chat Group, where people have been helping each other out. And the East Texas Freethinkers are accepting donations, and they're going to be delivering them to people in Corpus Christi, which is a little bit further south than Houston, and they were definitely hit a lot harder, more directly. We have a couple friends out here, Cherie Dorr, who is on Facebook. She's looking for people to contact her if they want to help out with specifically dealing with the homeless, because that's what she focuses on, is the homeless. And obviously people who are out in the streets dealing with this are going to be needing some assistance. And there's people coming from Austin, just a few hours away, Counterbalance and Austin Common Ground, who've been trying to help out. And then Bayou Action Street Health is another community organization that's taking donations. They're on Facebook. That's Bayou Action Street Health. And then Black Lives Matter Houston is going to be doing a bunch of community outreach once the water goes away. They said they're going to be going out and doing volunteering and stuff. Another group called the Liberty Coalition for Disaster Relief has been sending people down into the Houston area. We've got the Houston Freethinkers, our house, the Freethinker House. We're taking donations. We're a drop-off point. There's at least one lady coming from Colorado with like a truckload of trailer full of stuff. And I've seen people saying if you have access to a cell phone, people should use the Zello app, which is like a walkie-talkie type app, and they can look up Boaters, 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 Texas, I think, or Boaters, Houston, one of those two, and listen on that. And people are out there trying to find people who need to be picked up, and who are basically underwater or facing water. And then also another thing, just for anybody who may be listening from the Houston area or knows people out there, the Waze app, what WAZE, that people use for like traffic stuff like GPS and also to monitor cop checkpoints, that people have been using that to mark like closed roads and flooded roads and all around the Houston area. So that's another helpful tool if you're trying to get around. And yeah, I think that's pretty much most of the groups that I've been seeing. I know I'm sure there's more out there, but and then again, it's been pretty awesome because a lot of people are just showing how people will take care of each other. You know, that people will take care of each other no matter what. So I think also people have become more skeptical of FEMA over the years, which is pretty interesting.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks for coming on and you know, sharing with us what's going on down there in Houston, what you guys are dealing with, and hopefully everyone listening, if you can, you know, support some of these groups because, you know, people like the you know, the Cajun Navy and these kind of groups are much smaller and more nimble than FEMA, and they could react much quicker. And so these are like the first responders. FEMA may show up a week later and be like, okay, well, here's temporary housing for people who lost their houses. But the people that come in right away are individuals that are non-government people. And these are the guys these are the guys that are going to save lives, basically. So I'm glad that all that is happening. Hopefully you guys are able to take note. If you missed any of the stuff Derrick was listing off, you can get the archive version of this show on YouTube, and if you want to donate, you can go back and figure out who to donate to. Derrick, thanks for joining us, man. Look forward to having you back on here soon, and thanks for doing all you're doing, man, with the Decentralize Your Life tour, bro. It's bringing people together. We're started some good stuff here in San Diego because of it, and awesome job, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Later. All right, we're back. Had a little disconnection there for whatever reason. Let's get DP back on the line. So basically, Houston is a great example of non-political stuff going on. You know, a catastrophe of that magnitude. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, although I have to admit, I have seen some extremely ignorant people online saying, well, they shouldn't have voted for Trump. That's what they get. You know, like, obviously, these people are imbeciles. People are people. Animals are animals. Doesn't matter if they're left or right or what race they are. People are people. And, you know, what's going on right now down there, everyone's being affected, and bunch of people are responding and trying to help. So, you know, this is a perfect example of all the stuff that we've been talking about as far as self-reliance, getting yourself more decentralized, not relying so much on what we call the control grids and that kind of thing. And I'll tell you what, dude, like we're right now in the Southwest, we're facing a heat wave that today set records up in LA, Los Angeles County and areas like that. Tomorrow, we here at the Anti-Media studio, we're so close to the Pacific Ocean that it doesn't get that hot here. But tomorrow it's supposed to be really hot, and people die in this heat, dude. Older people who aren't ready for it, they go outside and they go to the store and they may die in this heat. It happens all the time. So it's pretty obvious that there is going to be more extreme weather events and stuff happening. And obviously we just overcame this massive drought. I mean, the weather is all in a funk, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with the amount of pollution that we're dumping into the atmosphere, into the oceans, and all the disruptions that we're doing all around the world. I mean, I'm not one of these Al Gore, alarmists, but cutting down rainforests, dumping oil spills, burning millions and millions of cars, burning fuel every day is probably not good for the planet. And of course, some things are going to change, but we're dealing with some extreme weather right now.
I think we're at a point like that tipping point passed, and it's, technology only goes so far, but if we're going to continue to just fall prey to this paradigm of using, fossil fuels we don't need them. We haven't needed them for a long time. We just keep using them, and because it's expedient, because the infrastructure is built, because the profit's huge, and there's an entire industry with a lobby behind it that's probably a top 3 lobby in the world. So it's tough to break our addiction to it, and it creates a war, ever-expanding empire scenario, and it sucks, dude. And it's like that and drugs, and I don't know, I guess they go after gold or whatever you want to call it these days. They go after just raw resources. They're the driving forces of all the wars. I mean, they just are if you look around the world, and it's not just us. China's over basically taking Africa apart right now. So, that doesn't get publicized, and they're on the verge of fighting India. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it boils down to greed, and the greed it's unnecessary. It was necessary 50 years ago. We had a scarce world, post World War II, but I mean, we're way beyond that at this point. With 3D printing, nobody should go for ever, hungry in the U.S. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's the thing, dude. There's all these things going on around the world. China, India, they just announced today that they're going to start getting along a little better. But, who knows how long that's going to last.
But those mountains have so much value, so it's only a matter of time. Eventually they want to carve up the Himalayas, because who knows what kind of rare earth's up in there. So
sooner or later, they're going to mine the shit out of that place.
Yeah, and it's a joke, because it's like people look at China as some kind of communist bastion of harmonious statism, and it's just simply not true. They're more capitalistic than we are.
Yeah, they just have one really, really big company. One thing I wanted to mention before we move on from the flood stuff and Hurricane Harvey, and been really happy with the Anti-Media's coverage of it, and I actually wrote an article about Harvey and why it was more. This is before it made landfall. I was kind of writing about why it's more worrisome than most people want to admit, because if you look at the recent coverage of major storms, because the U.S. hasn't experienced a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or larger, since like 2005. So it's been a real long time, and anytime there's a hurricane like off the coast of like Florida or something, the media goes into overdrive, and it's basically a bunch of fear mongering, because it makes hits, it gets clicks on their, and gets views on their shows. But this time around, there was a lot of alarmism, but it wasn't even enough. Like people got caught off guard in Houston bad. Like people dying. A lot of people lost their homes. People are just unprepared. This is one of the times where it's like, okay, it actually is time to panic, and people weren't panicking. They were, but
it's ironically like a cause and effect scenario, because you have Baytown, which is where Exxon refines everything that comes up from the Gulf, everything that they're pulling out of the ocean with these deep sea drilling platforms that every 10 years one of them blows, like BP did, and now that's underwater, and so now that's going to create a non-nuclear Fukushima scenario over there, and it's putting so much pressure on these big tanks that are already full of so much oil that it's possible they'll rupture off their bearings or how they're kind of mounted to the ground. And I mean, what if they float out somewhere and break? I mean, you could have another huge oil spill scenario here. And then what if it washes in? What if it gets in the sewer system? What if it gets in the water supply? I mean, Houston's one of the worst possible places this could happen because of how their infrastructure is set up and how they're basically an oil refinery. That's what they are.
Yeah, and there was a ruptured pipeline, chemical pipeline, 20 miles east of Houston. I'm trying to remember what it was, some kind of hydrocarbon, hydrochloride, something like that. I forget what it was exactly. It was some chemical agent they use in refining oil and other industrial products. So and like you said, dude, there's a huge industry there. A lot of that stuff's underwater, and it's who knows what's happening. I mean, it's all mixing in and flooding people's houses out. I mean, some people may have these chemicals in their houses now forever. For the rest of their lives, they're going to be living with it, breathing it in, absorbing it. It's not a good thing.
I have a buddy of mine that lives out there, Nick, and he's in one of these new suburbs of Houston, because Houston's ever expanding and there's plenty of room for ever. But anyway, he's in one of these new developments that's got a brand new sewer system and everything's up to code and paved away from your foundation and blah 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 blah. And he only got up to an ankle of water, and it still got up. And the worst thing about it was that when he bought his house, they said flood insurance is an extra $100 a month, and you're not in a flood zone. So did he get it? Nope. Now, luckily enough, it's not high enough to where it destroyed his house, because that's up at the knees or the hips. At the ankle, you're looking at just new flooring and stuff. But I mean, he got super fortunate. But there's about 100,000 houses they're assuming will be total losses with no flood insurance. So what would that do to a community? I mean, was Katrina even hit that hard?
Wow, that's crazy. Because Houston is so much bigger than New Orleans was. New Orleans is a pretty big city, but Houston is a super city. It's like I said,
it's the fourth largest city in the country.
Yeah, it's a metropolis. It's very, very big. It's kind of like, it reminds me of LA in many ways, though. I haven't been to all the big cities, but I've been to LA a lot. And
yeah, it's very concrete jungle.
I don't know how big Philadelphia is. Philadelphia is pretty big, but Houston is definitely the second biggest city I've ever been to. Very, very huge place, and it is kind of spread out too. So geographically speaking, it's very, very big as well. So yeah, geez, 100,000 uninsured houses. That's devastating. That's crazy. That's wow, man. That sucks.
And it's not that they're not insured. They're insured because you have to be insured under a loan. But when you're not in a designated flood zone, you're not required to carry flood insurance. I mean, it like they say, it takes 100-year storm to flood. This was that 100-year storm, and I just cannot believe that it's a coincidence that Trump signed that thing that was basically really lessening a lot of the storm requirements that were going to have to be needed for insurance. So a lot of people took advantage of that to lower their premiums and drop flood insurance right before this hit. And you can't tell me that with the advanced, predictive modeling they're doing with the weather, they didn't know that this was going to be more than 2 feet of rain. I mean, we're talking about now, I think it was over 70 inches. I mean, it's unparalleled. I don't think it's ever been measured at this point before.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just unimaginable. Especially for me, here in San Diego, we get like, I don't know, an inch of rain a year on average or something. It's just something like pitiful. Of course, we have our own issue with the drought and stuff, but 70 inches of rain is almost unfathomable. I can't even understand really what that means. It's just, wow, it's crazy. But again, back to kind of what Derrick was hitting on is there is a bunch of stuff here. I mean, if you were stranded in a storm and somebody came cruising up in a boat and it's like, hey, you need a ride? Are you going to actually ask them, hey, did you vote for Donald Trump? Or are you a Republican? Or are you a Democrat? Or did you support Hillary Clinton? No, you're not. You're going to jump in the damn boat and you're going to let them save you. This, to me, gives us another lesson. I know I've been talking about lessons all night. The lesson is that politics are an afterthought when it comes to life and death situations. And politics should be an afterthought when it comes to our life in general. Because Trump said he's going to go visit. What's he going to do? FEMA said they're going to go help. What are they really going to do? When it comes down to it, it's individuals helping individuals, and then individuals grouping together to help other individuals. Like
one of the groups Derrick mentioned, the Cajun Navy, I started liking their Facebook site and watching what they're doing, and they're picking up the slack. It's people that are driving in from Louisiana who have already been through this crap with Katrina. A lot of them are from up north, Baton Rouge area and interior, because they didn't really get hit at all. Driving down with their boats, with trucks, getting into the water, going out, saving people. Yeah, I've heard reports, or they even put on their own Facebook, that some of these people are trying to rob them of their boats, which is some of the messed up stuff going on in the looting. But, I mean, that just goes to even further drive that point in, that the government cannot and will not respond. And I honestly think they cannot. I don't think that with the amount of resources that are going outside of our country right now to fight other governments, that we have money to take care of these things. I honestly don't think we even have the balance sheet to do it. I think basically people should see this as indicative of what would happen in a real catastrophe that was nationwide, and that you're on your own. So you better start getting ready.
True.
I mean, don't be a statistic. What Derrick was saying about canning and getting a farm. If you can't afford a farm, we understand. Start hoarding food that lasts for 5 or 10 years. Start hoarding it. When it's cheap, when canned goods are cheap at the supermarket, buy them. When they're like a quarter a can, just fill them up. They'll keep you alive. There's going to be a point in time with this many people on the planet that there's going to be a supply chain hiccup. That hiccup may last 2 to 3 weeks. And that's assuming we don't have a world war. I'm just saying if we had an economic downturn, there could be 2 to 3 weeks where we're in a Venezuela scenario around the world. Are you prepared? And can you defend yourself, secondly? Because you can lock your doors, but if somebody breaks in and they're really hungry, can you make them leave? So, I mean, the cops are going to be overwhelmed. The cops are going to be at home protecting their family. The rich people are going to leave. So if you're thinking, what are the rich people going to do, blah, 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 the cops are going to protect them. No, they're not. The rich people are going to leave. They're going to get on a jet and go to New Zealand or somewhere else. So all I can say is just get ready.
Here's the thing. And, DB, you and me have been talking about this for several years now. I think we're going on like 4 or 5 years or something. I've lost count. I don't even keep track, to be honest. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time, being prepared, knowing how to defend yourself, having stuff that you can trade with. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the same that I've been seeing, and we've covered this on the antimedia.org a few times now. But it used to sound crazy when we're like, oh yeah, the rich people are, buying islands and getting ready for when shit hits the fan. They've got, closed loop, survival system set up and, hard to reach places in like New Zealand and, Zuckerberg is now over in Hawaii and there's a bunch of people going and getting remote areas up in the mountains and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This used to sound like crazy talk, but now you're seeing it on like mainstream media, news outlets, magazines and shit. Oh, these rich people are preparing for the apocalypse, and it's kind of like a lighthearted thing. But, dude, believe me, the rich people see this shit coming just as much as we do, and probably more because they're actually involved in bringing it about. So the fact that they're preparing and stuff, that tells you something. I'm not trying to do any fear-mongering or anything like that. But it's better to be prepared. And what harm does it do? What harm does it do?
People
3 weeks
should
food. Look, if you get 3 weeks worth of food, let's say you wait to do it when you get your tax return or something, or you do it little by little, and then you just cycle the oldest food out, use it in your dinners, replace it with newer canned goods. What harm can it be? Can it cause you? Nothing. You're not losing anything by stocking up on a few weeks worth of food and water. You're not losing. All you're doing is gaining, and you could eat that food. What if you get fired from your job and you're tight on money for a few months? You could use that food to supplement your damn dinners too. So there's no way to really lose on this. Being prepared, thinking ahead, having 3 weeks to a month worth of food and water, and a means to defend that those commodities. You can't really lose with that. That's all stuff that we should be doing anyway, whether it's prepping, whether it's for surviving, whether it's for weather or earthquakes or anything. There's no harm.
Go ahead. We're talking about like $1,000 of just a total investment of $1,000. I mean, you think about it, it's like $450 for a decent pistol, and maybe $100 for a good amount of ammo, and then maybe like $400 for a month or 2 months probably of freeze-dried food. And you can store your water up like Derrick was talking about in those 5-gallon big bottles or whatever they are, and they cost a couple bucks, and they cost like $1 to fill. So I mean, 5 gallons would be good for a family of 5 for a day. You need a gallon a day typically. So, if you're solo or with another person, 5 gallons will last a while. So, I don't know, man. Just get ready is all I can say. Just look at this as a lesson. I mean, how much money are you paying every year for tax? And now you see that they cannot respond to this kind of stuff. They can't deal with it. So, the money's going out. It's going elsewhere. And that on top of all this stuff, natural disasters, we still have never seen blowback for all of these empire wars yet. So we have to look forward to that at some point.
Yeah, dude, exactly, man.
They threaten 9/11 times whatever number they want to come up with every year that Dick Cheney needs a new heart, and it's portending that they know at some point somebody's going to hit us back for all this stuff we're doing. It's just it hasn't come to roost yet. And we haven't gone after Persia, which is Iran, yet, and we haven't gone after Russia. So those two countries can easily hit us with ICBMs like it's not even a problem. So, I mean, if North Korea can do it, imagine a couple of countries that have been around for thousands of years before we were even in existence.
Yeah, true. And so a lot of this stuff revolves back to like statism, and the U.S. is led by Donald Trump now, supposedly, and We've got all
led
these.
by President Mattis is what I'm going to just continue to say that it's President Mattis.
President Mattis.
It truly is. I mean, we got a 10% or 12% increase in defense budget. It's not a problem if he becomes like a Patton, but if he's like a more of a corporate guy, it becomes a problem. If he's stepping hand in hand with the MIC, then there's no end in sight because we're creeping towards $1 trillion on paper, and that's just, I mean, it's an ungodly amount of money. I mean, everybody out there that's basically paycheck to paycheck and can't get out of student debt and can't really afford groceries and such. That's the way it is because we're running on fiat currency that's subsidizing a machine that churns about $1 billion a day every day just sitting there. So, and then I think it's another couple billion a day every day because we're over in the Middle East. So we're talking about $1 trillion a year in real expense. So I don't know what the hell our Black Op budget is, but I'm sure it's 3 or 4 times that.
Yeah, and so we're just talking, this is big time, just huge statism, right? And that's really the big issue here is people all around the world, not just in the United States, but especially here because we've got this huge military. We give too much power and too much money and too much of our trust, really, to these politicians. And as soon as the U.S. empire stops or comes down and it finally power gets decentralized back to the states or whatever, then the next actor is going to fill the void, which is obviously at this point going to be China. And then we're going to run into the same issue here of statism. And so the bigger goal here, and this is the problem, and this is also the solution, we're dealing with a global problem, global statism problem, where the governments and people who can forcibly make other people do stuff are pretty much in bed with the hardcore exploiters. Take advantage of us, the parasites, the parasitic class. They enrich themselves off of our own labor and our own resources. And they're mostly in charge of every government at this point, whether it's Russia, the United States, China, Japan, the EU, Britain, you name it. Like, the parasites are in charge. And for years and years and years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, people have been attempting revolutions or taking another shot at government, trying to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to do this government thing? And really, to me, it's we've got to evolve. We keep attempting the same exact thing. We keep trying Republican democracy. We keep attempting that. I mean, shit, North Korea calls itself a republic. China calls itself a republic. The United States calls itself a republic. None of those things are republics.
Can you have freedom in a democracy, Nick? I don't think you can at this point. I don't. I think you need to have the 50 states be solidified as nations. I think that the major cities within them can become city-states with vassals around them, and everybody can have a hierarchy where they can get to the people that make the laws personally and do a French Revolution on them if needed. And that's the only way to take it back, is if you live next to a guy making the law and he doesn't like something and he fucks over the community and people die as a result, he loses his head. That way you have only honorable people doing these jobs. They're not in it to make a ton of money or do a bunch of sick shit like a lot of them do. You're just getting people like, for instance, you, Nick, if you were mayor of Chula Vista, I think you would run it for the benefit of the people in a libertarian fashion. You wouldn't be going after people. You'd be cutting taxes, and you'd be focusing on programs that work. And that's just what we need, dude. That's the only thing we need. That's the only reason government should ever exist.
I would give out free ponies. You know that. I would give out.
Anything, man. Like, just a flat tax rate, no cap on what you can earn, so that people that are earners will want to work more and you'll make more money, and it'll just motivate people. And I mean, honestly, at this point, with that way it is down there, might as well just pass immediate DREAM Act. And if you're already over the border, you just get your citizenship and then just deal with it. And fucking, that's it. And if you're not over right by now, then you're too fucking bad. But that just takes care of it. I mean, just fix things step by step. All the things Trump said he was going to do to fix things, he's not doing them. He's helping huge corporations, and it's shitty.
Yeah, exactly. And so the big thing here is that everywhere around the world is suffering from this disease of parasitic statism. And it comes in different flavors and different names. It comes in the capitalist flavor, it comes in the communist flavor, it comes in the socialist flavor, democratic flavor. Almost every government around the world suffers from the same issue of oligarchy, corporatocracy, whatever you want to call it. Few rich guys control the policy, and his companies, their companies, make a lot of money off everybody else. That's pretty much it for everyone, everywhere. And so the answer to this is not through engaging in politics, and this is where I've struggled recently, and just having to look myself in the mirror and figure things out for myself. I spent a lot of time in political activism, and I realized that it was a waste of time. And it's hard to let go of things like that and say, oh, you know what, I wasted my time, and shit, that sucks. But better
if you spread awareness.
Yeah, it's better to realize that and then move on from it than to continue wasting your time. And I'm not saying anything I've done with the anti-media has been a waste of time. I'm just saying the political activism that I've personally done in the past, trying to get people to vote, getting people to become aware of like third-party candidates and stuff, fine. But engaging in the system, trying to take over the federal government and get people that you like in there, it seems to me like a big time waste of resources and time and stuff. And the more effective route, and of course this is something we've emphasized the whole time on this show, is decentralization of everything as much as possible. And like I was saying, dude, as soon as we are successful here in the United States and we're like, you know what, we finally did it. The empire is over. We've closed our military bases. We've broken the place up, and the states run themselves now, and we don't have to deal with Donald Trump or whoever the next asshole is that's in charge. All that's done. And once we have that victory, it'll be nice. But then China takes over next, and they're going to deal with the same exact issue. And then after them. So this struggle here, again, goes back to this idea that we're dealing with an eternal struggle. And I guess it has a lot to do with human nature. And soon, with the takeover of artificial intelligence and stuff, it's going to have to, we're going to have robotic intelligence mixed in with artificial intelligence mixed in with human nature and human flaws and stuff. Like, we're going to be dealing with some interesting times.
That's the true enemy, really, is the misuse of AI, and not to lift us up, but to keep us in chains. And anybody that's scared of like China or Russia or any other country, you just got to look at that as the alternative. If we're all going to have to band together and fight these technocrats eventually.
Yeah. So decentralizing power is it's what I like so much about it is that it's really non-political and it's universal. Like, everybody can basically agree on that, whether it's business, whether it's food, energy, water, church, religion, anything.
I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing, but call it a reality, cause there's no illusion.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.